Let's look at their African exposure, and here let's start with Tongaat-Hulett, who is setting the trend when it comes to the African stage.
The biggest areas of their involvement are Mozambique, where they've got a big sugar estate which they've been working on for years, north of Shai called Shinavan or something like that. And then they've got a sizable operation in Zimbabwe, the one I was erroneously called Happy Valley. It's not called Happy Valley, it's called Hippo Valley. The problem there is that they've got 50% of it. Unfortunately, there's an indigenization issue that it's reared its ugly head in the Zimbabwean
red
case.
flag coming through with that indigenization issue, Chris.
Are you talking about
I'm talking
that?
Specifically now Tongaat-Hulett.
Yeah, and that's something that's hanging over their heads, I think. As Paul says, they've expanded quite a lot in recent years, but this Zimbabwe thing, there's a bit of a standoff here. You know, the authorities in Zimbabwe say, no, you've got to come in and comply with this. And from what I can see, up until now, the guys at Tonga are giving them the cold shoulder, and they're largely ignoring them. For how long that such a situation can persist, I don't know.
Illovo and African strategy, are they charging ahead on the continent?
Look, they've always been there as well. Their big stakes are in Malawi and Zambia, where they have the majority stake in entities that are actually listed in that market.
So we've got this pretty much contained to SADC for the two.
Yeah, look, Illovo had a very expensive misadventure in Mali, where they decided they were going to go and get stuck in there and spent, I don't know, 250 million something with us.
So came back with their tail between their legs.
And then Malawi blew up a year or two ago with a sectarian strife and a coup and so on, and they just cut ties and said, look, we're gone. And in fact, Illovo's results this year look quite good because they're comparing favorably against the year with the Malawi mistake in the prior period.
Chris, a quick comment on Illovo, again on African footprint.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Malawi, I think close on 40% of their profits coming out of Malawi these days. And bear in mind what I said a few moments ago.
Let's just repeat that, in fact, 40% of the profits coming out of Malawi.
Malawi, yeah. Malawi is very big for them. But look at that sugarcane belt. The further north in Africa you go, you're getting much warmer conditions, you're getting a lot more water. You know, South Africa is a relatively water-deprived area. So the conditions are far better there. But that swathe is actually quite narrow. So you go an awful lot further than that, you start getting into places where it doesn't work so well. So I think Illovo has been remarkably clever in the areas in which it's gone into.
Paul, having just come back from the World Economic Forum on Africa in Cape Town, 2014 is clearly being seen as the year of agriculture and food security. This could put both these companies on the center stage and looking for, you know, and discovering facts like 60% of the uncultivated arable land is in Africa. It's going to be a big story going forward. It could be a boost.
Yeah, and both of them deserve that rating because they've been there for decades, working hard. I mean, the Zambian business of Illovo, they've put enormous amounts of capital into a big new sugar estate sort of to the bottom left-hand side of Zambia. You know, and it's not easy. They've had to deal with infrastructural challenges and all sorts of things. I think the key challenge really from the investment market's point of view is whether they're confident to give the same kind of earnings multiples to a business in Malawi or Zambia that they do to a business in a place like South Africa. That remains the concern because they're not going to be happy to see what's going on in Zimbabwe and will worry. We know we've had political instability in some of these countries. Having said that, there's quite a lot of positive sentiment going around with regard to both Zambia and Malawi because of, you know, political changes and elections.
I'm actually saying, what about potentially moving out of SADC? I know you mentioned the Mali example. It didn't work well, but in terms of Nigeria and Kenya and pursuing those opportunities, you've got Minister Adesina in Nigeria who is so into this agricultural story and pushing the agenda forward. Surely they could unlock something. Don't we need a wild card in this environment?
Look, I think you've got to be careful. As I said before, the growing conditions don't necessarily work when you go that far forward. That far north into Africa. It's a fairly thin swathe. I'm not saying you can't grow it there, but I'm saying you probably can't grow it as well as you can in places like Mozambique. Look at Mozambique today. It's producing about 1/7 or 1/8 of the sugar it produced in the 1970s. So, you know, there's huge potential in many of these other countries in SADC.
Right, so you're limited by geography then. We've got to look at who is edging ahead on the Africa story or the Africa expansion.
I just think it's got to be Illovo again because unfortunately in Tongaat's case they've put a lot of work into the Zimbabwean asset and there's a big question mark over it. So it's all about which country you're in and it's the thing that you made decisions on decades ago and, you know, now we're harvesting the consequences.